LinkedIn Echo Chamber. This is ML's like Team Spirit. Today we have Michelle Wong with us. Michelle, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, where are you dialing in from, please?
I'm in London at the moment in the southeast.
London in the southeast. Excellent. Well, Michelle, thanks for joining us. I've invited you here for a special reason, Michelle. And the reason is this. This is a platform where we have data scientists, analytics experts, machine learning engineers, and they come on with me and they talk about data science algorithms and big data and all that kind of stuff. But I wanted you to come on because you're going to talk about small data today. And you're going to talk about econometrics, which is a kind of analytical technique in advertising. And I always think of it as kind of small data because it's really, several hundred data points sometimes. Doesn't even need, a database or a data warehouse and these kind of things. And I know that you're an expert in it. So I wanted you to come on. Well, before we dive into the detail, though, I'd like you to introduce yourself, please, Michelle. So for about 60 seconds, if you could tell us, where you started, what you were doing, and how you got to this point.
Sounds good. Yes, I'm Michelle. So I've worked in data and analytics for around 17 years now, so quite a long time. Started off with building econometric models to understand and improve marketing effectiveness. So I did that both agency side, and then I moved to do that client side, and that's where I met John. And then I led a team in Expedia in search analytics. So that was driving projects to understand and improve the performance of search marketing. And then the role moved towards leading marketing capital allocation across all channels. Now then, finally, in my most recent role at Farfetch, I've been more sort of leadership management role here. So I've been building, transforming and leading teams in BI, analytics and data science, supporting marketing acquisition, customer retention, and a bit of product as well.
Okay, Michelle, thanks for taking us through that. Michelle, I've got a book on my desk. And I wondered if you have it or you remember it. So it's Econometrics. You can't really see it with the blur. Econometrics, Christopher Doherty, London School of Economics professor. Do you remember this one?
I don't remember that one. I remember, I think it was Robert Greene or something like this. So
okay, we'll see if we can get some affiliate links to still sell these books. I was going to ask if having this book makes me an econometrician, but I'm not sure I really remember how to do it. So I'll take this interview as a refresher class for me. So let's kick off then. So I heard you say Econometrics is here to help us with marketing effectiveness. I've set it up for you in that it's a small data problem, really. So we could probably jump in there. Like, I'd like to know, well, what is it? If you could give us a bit of an overview. I'd love your opinion on if it counts as machine learning. We're a machine learning show. So do you think that's true or false? And then, what do you do?
Yeah, so econometrics, just to point out, is marketing mix modeling. MMM is basically the same thing, but different names that people call it. So it basically allows us to understand the effectiveness of marketing, and therefore then how do we improve the return on investment on that spend. So we all know that companies spend like millions of dollars on marketing, and there's a famous quote out there, which is like, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is, I don't know which half. So what Econometrics does is to demystify that and then help you decide on where to spend your next marketing dollars. So then in terms of, I think, John, you mentioned in terms of, is it machine learning? So when I was an econometrician, the goal is to improve model fit, but then it also needs to make business sense. I'm not going to sacrifice in terms of making sure that the model makes sense. So it's a bit of a art and science to build in the model in that way. And as you mentioned, the data is smaller data, but it comes from lots of different sources, and they come in different formats and different availabilities. So it's quite difficult to get it, say, streamed and updated as real time as possible for machine learning. So in its current state, I wouldn't say that econometrics is purely machine learning, but it has the potential to move that way if we can improve data availability and also make sure that we've got some solutions to ensure the model makes sense as well.
Michelle, brilliant answer. Thank you for that. Can you tell us what the data would look like so people could sort of get a feel for like what are you really looking at when you have this small data set? People are used to rows and columns, but what would it be? What degree of aggregation, or what would the columns look like? What are the inputs to something like this?
Yeah, so basically what you end up with is that you're modeling out some performance metric of the business. So that could be sales or revenue, for example. You've also got then all of your marketing activities. So that could be your TV activity, your paid, unpaid activity on search, display, etc. Everything that we need, all of that. And then the other factors really depend on your business. So that could be, and also in your industry. So that could be any events that you've run or like seasonality factors, for example. And generally in terms of how it's organized is that we have data which is over time, because we're modeling this over time. And then we may have it, if possible, by region, and that could be various levels of geo. Just that allows us to pick up different variations of data. So just to give an example, like for example, you may run TV activity in UK, but not in Germany. So we're able to take that into account and then model out the effects, taking that in, with that information.
Good. And Michelle, I got a question that you weren't expecting.
Okay.
So Econometrics is trying to understand the drivers of a kind of a metric using some of those input variables.
Yeah.
Could you go into what you are doing in the data preparation side? So there's these kind of advertising concepts about saliency. So how long do some different types of advertising like stay in the mind of consumers? If you spend an ad dollar today, they've got kind of these different effects. So you told us what the data will look like. What are some of the things you are doing as an econometrician when you're preparing for model building and some of those bits that people might not recognize or might not know about?
So yeah, these are a bit sort of smaller details to it. So you could do things what we're saying like decay factors in terms of your memory of the ad today, which you see it is higher today, but as over time, over the next days, it may decay over time, and you can do variations of that. So you can say it could decay at 90%. So you lose memory of 10% each day. You test out different ones that would fit the model the best, but also make business sense. Other things could be a lag effect, so one thing could sorry, this is very old, but before you would send direct mail through the post, but you may not look at it that day. It may have a lagged effect because you may look at it several days after. So then you would test out lag effects, for example. So there's different things that we test out in this to understand, which sort of tries to model out consumer behavior in some sense, and you can do these in combination as well. And then the only other one I was thinking about whilst we were chatting is we also look at synergistic effects as well. So if you're running TV and you're running search at the same time, you might be on your mobile and watching TV. Does it have a bigger impact or not? Does it allow us to improve, say, the memory of that ad over time?
So the synergy, is this something you're testing for when you come up with your recommendations? This would be like a common question of like, should I do everything independently? How should I overlap media for greatest impact? Are these the kind of scenarios that brands put together when they come to an econometrician?
Yeah, correct. So then when they got the media plans, they got all of the media activity. How do we lay this out over time? So it could be like combinations of them over together. It could be like, if we're looking at TV, do we do a high burst first and then do lower bursts of TV as we go along? Or is it better to be stable across them all? So we would do lots of different tests along that. So some of the things do lead to, like, say, regional testing so that we can understand truly does this have an impact in that sense.
So Michelle, if I try to generalize and say that you've done lots of econometrics projects as a consultant, what would you summarize? I know you're going to try and say, well, it's different by industry and it's different by the level of ad spend, but if I asked you for a bit of an average as to like what is just the best thing to do with your media to drive an impact, so I ask you to ignore industry, I ask you to ignore the magnitude of the spend. If I just said, of what you remember, what is the best thing people can think about? Either one of the synergies that you saw very often, or a particular laydown that was like, this is, that you feel it's a universal truth. Like this is just always a good thing to do. What would you reach for?
I would say if you're looking at, say, more the above the line media, so your brand marketing side, most of the impact is mostly on TV. and high weighted TV in that sense. So I would say consistently be in on that. It's harder to pick up effects from like press and outdoor activity, for example. Not to say it doesn't have an impact, but we can't is harder to measure as well. I would say that's one of the key things. And then online, I would say mostly has an immediate impact on sales, less of a longer term effect. So if you're looking for the longer term effect, mostly go for your more brand media type of things.
Thanks for that. And when I first met you, I remember talking to you and asking you this question. So we'll repeat it. I can't remember what you said at the time, so I can't validate if you've changed your mind or not. But the question was, hey Michelle, can you tell me about what makes a difference between a good and a bad project in econometrics? So you did so many of them. You will have had great ones. You might have had car crashes. Like what kind of characterizes a great econometrics project?
I think I put two things. One of them is the data. I think this is for any sort of data analysis, modeling, machine learning, etc. We need to make sure it's correct. So there's a lot of work done in terms of the data preparation side to make sure that's correct and that we are modeling the right effects on in that sense. And then the other side, I mentioned it a bit earlier, is that we need to make sure that the model makes sense. Because here we kind of, it's almost, when I think of the model itself, is like almost fitting shapes to a line in like within an area. So you can fit any shapes that you want, but if it doesn't make any sense, then we can't use the information. So I think the sort of overview and looking at the model itself to make sure that what is spitting out makes sense is quite important as well.
Well, Michelle, I've got two pieces of good news, one piece of bad news for you. So the two pieces of good news are that was the answer that you gave me 12 years ago because you just reminded me of it. And it was such a good answer because you're saying this is is a great answer for this day and age because it's kind of predictive learning can run away with itself. But you're really saying there needs to be this collaboration of like, hey, does this make sense? Is that data real? Am I interpreting it correctly? So I think you're describing a high degree of collaboration around a modeling project, which can be a bit different to sometimes data science, which is crazy technical, happening in the basement or something like this. So it's a great answer. The other good news is, Michelle, you've survived your first interview with me. So thank you for doing this. And the bad news is we're about to hit time. So Michelle, thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. This is ML's Like Teen Spirit.